Marco,
Sean.
when was the last time you played dodgeball?
Dodgeball. I like that game. A long time ago, I would play it. I wouldn't be as good. When you age, it's not easy to dodge the ball, but maybe it's better if I stay away.
That's because you have legacy experience that you're dragging around with you. Is that
I have legacy. My body is a legacy.
That's right. I'm doing my best to tie it back to legacy technology, and you'd think we get wiser in our business operations, but somehow we carried luggage with us, and we're not as fast and nimble as maybe we were before in the past. So,
and I think the game is a little bit more complicated than dodgeball.
Just a little bit.
And a little bit when you talk about cybersecurity. Yeah. But Sean, before we go there, I got to say that I am excited. This is the first episode of our famous or infamous, I don't know, chats on the road to an event. And this event, as people know, that has been following us for years, is where ITSP Magazine actually was born. So it's kind of a birthday when we go to
we hatched 10 years ago.
We hatched a long time ago. And the chats on the road at the time were actually driving in the car, recording a podcast.
That's right.
On the way
from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. Exactly. Well, I'm thrilled to kick this off, and it's a great topic and a great guest who's sitting there patiently wondering what the heck are these guys doing. Jess Nall, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, and now you know something you didn't know before. So
that's right.
That's right.
You're wrong.
Marco is not as good at dodgeball as he used to be. It's a very important topic. Now, so let me kick this off. Congratulations on getting a speaking spot at Black Hat. Any speaking spot is challenging. Black Hat even more so, I think. And it's an important topic, which is probably why it caught their attention. The subject is essential strategies for CISOs to sidestep government fallout in the wake of major cyber attacks. There have been a number recently, and some have caught the attention of the SEC, and lots of good stuff. Well, I don't know, maybe good stuff isn't the right way to put it, but lots of things have happened specifically to the role and to the people in the role, and leaving people on shaky ground, right, as a CISO. So tell us, before we get into the topic, tell us a little bit about what you are up to. You're at Baker McKenzie and a partner there. So what are all the fun things you get to do?
Sure. So I have been at this practice 24 years. So I was much better at dodgeball when I started than I am now. But in terms of helping navigate clients through government scrutiny, government intervention, investigations, internal investigations, I defend against the federal government. So I've had the honor and pleasure of representing probably the most number of CISOs in federal investigations and litigation, probably more than anybody else in the country. So it's been really great, really educational, obviously very difficult for my clients to go through. Really one of the worst things that could happen to somebody in their life would be, in addition, other than a horrible medical diagnosis, would be being under that intense government scrutiny. So I've been there. I've held the hands of so many in information security through that. And that's what I want to keep doing, and what I'm hoping to accomplish in part through speaking at Black Hat is to give some people some good tips to avoid ever having to call me, but also give them my number to call me if they need me.
So I want to start, Sean, if I may, because
of course, yeah.
It reminds me every time we talk about the history of the internet and why it wasn't secure, right? So, well, it was just something between three universities, and nobody thought it was going to become what it is. And somehow I feel like, I'm in IT, I fix computer, I do network, I do this and that, and then all of a sudden it become not dodgeball anymore. A lot more complicated. So with your experience of so many years, the progression, if not a little bit of a history of how we got to where we are in these kind of roles.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a really difficult situation, right? It's only getting harder every day to repel the threat actors and to always have the best new tools and always do that one extra thing that needs to be done. That's going to be the thing that's going to keep the network safe. And it's gotten much harder over the years, obviously, as the threat actors have become much more sophisticated. And as the attack surfaces, all the data is like really grown in size and scope. And the US government has not gotten any better at going after the threat actors, especially when they're international. It's a very, very difficult task, especially when it's nation state actors, which it often is, to find someone to single out to make deterrence happen, to try to affect what the government believes should be done in terms of cybersecurity preparedness. And so what's evolved is that they've gone closer to home to the individuals who are actually on the front lines fighting that fight, and have singled several of them out. We all know the famous cases. And that's how they're trying to change the hearts and minds and actions of information security at the corporate level. But I don't agree with that. I don't think it's the right thing to do, but that's kind of the way the history's evolved.
Yeah, and of course, many positions, I'm with you. I've heard countering positions that investors have a right to know and to have their investments protected, and if they're not being protected properly, somebody needs to be held liable. But I mean, the government has fallen prey to attacks. So I don't know how it's possible for them to point a finger and then hold somebody liable against a nation state that even a government agency would have a tough time standing up against. So I guess the point of your talk is to kind of get, I believe, and maybe you can share for us what your objective is. But it seems to me that it's some advice and some guidance on how to navigate the role, navigate the tools, navigate the program, navigate the communications to shield oneself from that really bad thing that the government might come after them. So maybe if you can kind of elaborate on that, that'd be great.
Sure, absolutely. To your point, to the extent the shareholders do have a right to know in our society, the SEC holds that as the number one goal of all their enforcement. The question is, whose role is it to inform the shareholders, right? And is it really the warriors on the front line of the war who should be responsible for that? Or is it somebody else in a different role? And so in large part, my talk at Black Hat will be about how CISOs and other folks in information security, because this touches everybody, touches the lawyers that work hand in hand with information security personnel, and everybody from the line level all the way up to the CISO and beyond. It touches everybody to figure out whose role it is, and then to make sure that the systems are set up to insist on procedures and ways of acting, working together, so that you're less likely to be the person singled out for that intensive government scrutiny. If you're unfortunately part of a giant attack that hits the headlines, like a couple have done in the last week, go into that. But there's a lot of things remaining to be seen about all the things that happened there. But whenever there's a major attack and then there's a long lag until disclosure, usually that's when I get called, because there's a lot of questions about why didn't we hear about this sooner? What happened? What decisions were made? And so yeah, that's the point of of what I want to share is based on my experience over at least the last 10 years. What are some things you can think about doing now, before an incident, during an incident, and after, to ensure that, that you're not going to be the one taking the fall?
For me, there are only certain number of hours in the day. One could choose to work all 24, right? Not sleep, spend no time with family. That's not going to happen in the real world, hopefully. So there's a set amount of time. Certainly, budget's an issue. Certain amount of money available, number of staff available to support, and both in the security part of it and also around the rest of the business. So it really boils down to prioritization of what's important. And that's leading me to my sense that some of the cases have been high profile and newsy, maybe a few months back. Breaches are now, in the last couple of weeks, some have risen to the surface, not necessarily cases in my perspective. What has caught the attention of the media and is talked a lot about is AI, right? So my point, I guess, is that's probably a very pertinent topic from the board and the leadership perspective of the company, and that's what they're asking the CISO to deal with at the moment, and not necessarily go figure out how to protect yourself if something bad happens. So guidance and direction from the executive leadership team and the board and whatnot kind of puts priorities out of whack from my perspective, and the lack of news in some cases kind of supports that as well. So I don't know, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. There is tremendous pressure, at least where I sit here in the Bay Area, all the tech clients that I work with, there's a lot of pressure coming from above to not only, develop and market and race to have the best AI systems, but also to use the systems internally to start incorporating AI tools pretty much in any use case that can be imagined. And naturally, the cross-functional team of doing the risk evaluation and governance for that is always going to involve the CISO. So you're right. It's kind of a perfect storm where you've got, an increasing amount of responsibility in a new area where a lot of the risks are not even necessarily fully known yet. In addition to your day job of keeping the threat actors out. So yeah, it's only getting more difficult out there in terms of the time pressure and the overall responsibility that's being placed on information security in today's AI arms race.
Well, I remember conversations with CISOs many years ago, where it was becoming very difficult to be a CISO. It was already difficult. And somebody said, well, they're expecting too much from a CISO. Maybe we need 2 CISO. Maybe we need 3 CISO, one specialized in one thing or another. I can name a bunch of people that are CISO that have said this. And as you said, it's just getting more and more complex. So here's my question as someone that is not as deep as you both are in the topic. So it's more of a common sense of, instead of having to teach, not to take your talk away, but my point is, instead of having to teach how to dodge the ball, why don't we change the fact that maybe the balls shouldn't be thrown to begin with? So my point is, isn't somebody should point the finger to the regulation and the laws and study something that is more acceptable than just say, well, something happened. Well, there's that guy.
Yeah, in an ideal world, it would work that way.
Yeah,
but I think,
yeah,
it's not really. I'm not going way out on a limb or taking a political position to say that our legislature has a hard time putting out, universally acceptable legislation that everybody can follow. And instead, what we have is And this is regardless of who is in the White House. We have regulation by enforcement. Executive agencies like the SEC and Department of Justice, will wait for that bad thing to happen, and then they'll kind of work backwards from there to figure out who is closest to the blast zone, and that person is the one that gets to be on the hot seat. I don't think it's the right way to approach things. I think it's misguided, but it's kind of, at this point, it's baked in for decades in the US that's just how it works. So part of my talk will be about explaining that kind of the chessboard that we're playing on and why people do what they do when that bad thing happens, so that people can be more prepared and aware.
Yeah, but I guess my point is, do you see something happen in that direction? I know it's complicated, and I'm not asking you to give the solution, but are we maybe getting there, or you think it's just status quo and it's gonna stay? Like, this is the board, and this is what we're gonna play with.
Well, hopefully after my talk, we will all be we'll be Teflon. We'll be able to bounce it back. And the major SEC enforcement action that's still pending hasn't been resolved yet. So it's possible. I mean, it's candidly more likely it'll end up in a settlement that won't be satisfactory to anybody. But it's possible that the folks involved in that will fight successfully, and that we'll start to get some good precedent on the side of, not us, not today. We're not the droids you're looking for. Find someone else. And that tends to be how it works here in our country too, that it's the courts that ultimately get to decide. And that's really up to the individuals of how hard they want to fight. So, on the one hand, you can prevent it. That would be great. I hope that after people hear what I have to say, there'll never be another CISO federally investigated. But if they fight hard and they win in court, that helps a lot too.
So when we talk cybersecurity, one of the messages we always talk about is, one, an organization often thinks they're not a target and therefore not at risk, and therefore don't have to do much to mitigate the risk, if anything, especially when it moves down into small, medium business that not as mature in that realm as well. Do CISOs have that same kind of mindset for themselves in this regard? In other words, do they think, well, my CEO has my back, or my program isn't complicated really in the grand scheme of things, so therefore, or I'm not in an industry that's regulated, or, some of the same comments you might hear from an organization. Does the CISO have the same thing? Because one of your points in the talk is red flags, right? And
Absolutely.
to me, that's a sign, right?
Yes,
so
it is. Yeah, no, I think you put your finger right on it. I think you could share the stage with me in August. But yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think when you go into the CISO role, you're expecting your job to be a certain thing, and you're on the front lines, you're protecting the company, you're maybe sitting on the AI committee, whatever it is. But you're not the person who's responsible for creating a cross-functional team with SEC Disclosure Council and all the rest of that. You just kind of trust, I think, that the corporation's going to work effectively. And my talk is about, don't trust that. Take control of that, understand that, insist on certain lines of communication. And if you don't get it, look for the red flags. And eventually you have to make a decision to understand the risk to you personally, that it's not, you can't just assume that everything's going to be fine as long as you do your job. Nobody can ever be sure that you've done enough to prevent a horrible attack from happening. So, feeling complacent, trusting too much, those are all things I think we all probably do, but certainly in this area.
Well, I'm very tempted to ask you some other of those tips, but I guess we will have to just come and be in the audience when you do your presentation. And it's our job, as we said at the beginning before we hit record, to don't let you spill all the beans, because we want people to come. And I think people will come because it's a very hot topic. And we think that the line will be outside of the door, and Sean and I will be there.
That's right.
I can't wait. Thank you so much for coming.
We'll be pushing people in, cramming them in, standing room around.
I love it.
All right. Well, Jess, it's been fantastic chatting with you as the sirens blast by me here. Wednesday, August 7th, 3:20 in Jasmine A, level 3, according to the schedule of Black Hat. 40-minute briefing by you, Jess. The title, Essential Strategies for CISOs to Sidestep Government Fallout in the Wake of Major Cyber Attacks. Not quite dodgeball, but dodging something anyway. And like Marco said, important topic. I do hope CISOs and their leadership team around them and the teams that support them all join you to get your insights. And I'll be there as well.
And we will be there. And because this is the first episode of Chats on the Road, there'll be many more on the way and the time that separate us from the event, which is August 3rd to the 8th, 2024 at the Mandalay Bay, Las Vegas. We will be there. And if you can be there, come by, say hi. And if you can't, just follow all our coverage, because we're going to have a lot of conversation like this. So Jess, thank you so much.
Thank you both. I can't wait to see you in Vegas.
Absolutely. We'll be there.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.